Things have not been good when it comes to DC at the box office. Of course, we know James Gunn took over the DC universe and is now going to do his own thing with a semi-reboot, partial reboot. Nobody's quite sure exactly what to expect. But the last several things that have come out have been absolute bombs. Black Adam, Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods, The Flash, and now you might as well add Blue Beetle to that list. In the lead up, we saw some horrific box office projections. They got better as we got towards the actual release date. But now it's finally here. The opening weekend for Blue Beetle is one of the biggest embarrassments in DC box office history. Blue Beetle global box office lands another underwhelming debut for DC. The movie opened below Birds of Prey and The Suicide Squad at the domestic box office. In fact, this movie at the domestic box office opened lower than every single DCEU movie, with the exception of Wonder Woman 1984, which was put out in only 2,000 theaters when crowds were limited to like 10 or 25% at the height of COVID and was released on the same day on HBO Max. How fucking pathetic is this? Blue Beetle stumbles with $25 million domestic debut, but does end Barbie's 4-week streak. Barbie almost got it in its 5th weekend with around $21 million, but Blue Beetle somehow managed to hang on to that #1 spot. When you look at the international numbers, it's even more embarrassing. It's bad enough to have $25 million debut, which is about $5 million less than Shazam 2, which ended up being one of the worst DC flops of all time. What do we have internationally? It's significantly worse. Blue Beetle grossed $18 million on a 5-day opening overseas, the lowest ever for the DCEU, below Shazam 2's $34.6 million, and even under Wonder Woman 84's $38.5 million, with 39 markets under 25% capacity at COVID peak. That's how bad this movie is performing. That's how few people want to actually show up for this thing. We've talked about the controversies with the director, with the trailer, with pushing identity politics, making this thing all about identity politics, and clearly it did not go over well with the intended audience. Just look at some of this shit. The fact that you're sitting there at an $18 million opening. Barbie, in fact, when you look at the global number, Barbie made more than Blue Beetle did this weekend, but domestically, it came up just a little bit short of it. And look at the headline. I just can't help but laugh because they're using the same fucking headlines. On Variety, Blue Beetle stumbles. What about Variety? Shazam, Fear the Gods stumbles with $30 million opening weekend. Even go back. Look at the global opening for The Suicide Squad. Again, still recovering from COVID and released on the same day on their streaming service for free. And it still had a $72 million global opening compared to Blue Beetle's $43 million. And when you just stack it up against all these things in DCEU box office history, and I know people are going to, is this really a DCEU movie? James Gunn said it might be the first DCU character. James Gunn says a lot of shit. This is a DCEU movie. They even confirmed there were references to Man of Steel. The director said that himself. All this shit. But look at this opening weekend. The only thing it beat was Wonder Woman 1984 at the height of COVID, a day-in-day streaming release. This officially is the worst opening in box office history. The worst opening that actually had a full opening. Like, undeniably. $25.4 million at the domestic box office and international box office. It's even more gloomy. What a pathetic performance. And when you look across the landscape, again, you can put it in there. There's a lot of reasons why you can explain this happened. People are tired of generic superhero movies. People are tired of identity politics. People don't know what to expect with DC. You came in, you said you're going to reboot this universe. How can people be invested in these characters if they don't know they're sticking around? Well, James Gunn told everybody that this Jaime Reyes is going to stick around in the DCU. Whether he's telling the truth or not is up for anyone's best guess, but it doesn't matter. This movie is likely going to end up as another $100 million loss for Warner Brothers and for DC. This is a movie that cost very similar in terms of production budget and likely marketing to Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods. That movie ended up losing over $100 million. This one could be even worse.